In the previous video, we wrote our first program with our square piece that's right in front of our robot. Talked about motion groups and the correct procedure on actual programming. So now we're going to do the circle and triangle. The circle item we're going to do with just the world frame because our items are parallel to our X and Y coordinates. And for our triangle, we are going to create a user frame inside that program to utilize and make things a little bit easier to work with. So just to review, let's go into the square program and actually look and see what's happening. So let's go to select, and here's our square. If we need to, we can go up or down. Enter will bring us in. And if you remember, we set up our headings. So we have our frame set up. So we're using U tool number 1 and U frame number 1. For our home position, we're setting this as our home position. Then going down to the actual program, it will go down at a joint mode to the first area, and then it will go as a linear movement to each of the points, back up, and then we're going to go back up to the home position to end the program. So now what we're going to do is we're going to write kind of the same program, but we're going to have the circle and triangle in one program. So let's go back to select. Let's go to create. And let's go to options keyboard, and we'll call it circle triangle, and should not have any spaces in there. There we go. And if we just want to make sure with the motion group, and you'll notice that group mass number 1 is working, so that means our robot will be moving. So I'm going to go back to our previous view, circle triangle, enter to go in. And now we have our actual program set up. So let's go to new instruction and give it a heading, miscellaneous, remark, and this is going to be our frame setup. So we're going to click our ABC, frame setup. So frame setups. So for our circle, we're going to be using tool frame number 1. For our triangle, we're going to be using tool frame number 1 as well. So I'm going to go new instruction, arrow over, offset frames, and I'm going to go tool frame and constant tool frame number 1, which is going to be our pointer. And then we're going to start off with the circle, and the circle we're going to use user frame number 1. So we're going to go new instruction, arrow over, user offset frames, user frame, and we're going to use constant number 1, which is going to be our world frame. We'll use user frame number 2 for our triangle. We'll set that up just a little bit later, but we're going to do the circle first. Now before we continue in saving points, for example, the home position here, we have to make sure that we are in the U tool number 1 and user frame number 1. So let's close out here, menu, and setup, frames. So here's tool frame, just to make sure, go set IND 1, enter. So we're definitely in tool frame number 1, other, user frame, and set IND, user frame number 1, enter. So you have to make sure that you are in the actual user frames that you have set up in the program. So I'm going to go back to select, circle triangle program, enter. So we are now definitely in U tool number 1 and U frame number 1. So let's go down to the end, new instruction, miscellaneous, and let's add a remark, and this is going to be our home position. And let's save this as our home position. Now if this is not in the position that it's supposed to be, just go to position, joint, and zeros across the board except joint number 5, which we make -90. So let's go add move point, and no matter where we're at, we're going to use a joint movement 100% to get to that point. So remember that this is the position we're at. Number 1 is going to be our home position. So I'm going to click here, ABC, and I'm going to type in home POS. There we go. So now we have a name associated to point number 1. End. So now we have our home position, and now we're going to come down to the circle position number 1. So we need to figure out where the center of the circle is in relation to the home position or the world frame of our robot. So we can click our circle and it will give us the numbers. If you don't see these numbers, just double click it. So I'm going to write this down, 450 in the X and -400 in the Y. And if you remember from our previous item, our previous square program, we are negative 312 from the bottom. So let's go to that position. So when we go position, X, Y, and Z, the X is going to be 450, the Y is going to be negative 400, and then the Z is going to be negative 312. Move 2, and it should go exactly to the center. Then we're going to close out of here, click the end of that tool, which will bring up our UCS, and we're going to go to our first position, which is right down here, and it's going to be 100 millimeters down. Click, and you'll notice that we are exactly at point. So now let's add a remark here, and let's call this circle program. Exit. And we're going to go from our home position directly down to that point right there. So we're going to use a joint movement. So we're going to go add move point, joint, and if we want, we can name that point. So I can go ABC, and I go circle point 1. Exit. So now number 2 is going to be associated with circle point 1. So now we're going to use a circular movement to this position right here. So you need, for a circular position or circular arc, you need to have a start, you need to have a radius, and then the end point. So we're going to put in all these points, and then we're going to go back into the program and switch it from a linear to a circular motion. So let's grab these points. Let's go down 100 and then over 100. So now we're in position. So we're going to add that point. So let's go down to end, add move point. We're going to go linear. So now that we have this position, we're going to swap this to a circular motion. So we're going to go up and then over to the L, and you'll notice as soon as we hover on the L, it switches to motion modifier. We're going to go to circle, and then now we have our point 3. Now it's asking us what is going to be our final point. So we're going to put in that final point right here. So let's go down here, and I'm going to go down to that 100 and then up. So we're going to arrow down and then all the way to the left, so that our arrow or our cursor is right here, and then you'll notice that a touch-up shows, and you have to hold shift in order for that to work. So shift, touch up, and then now we are at position 4. So let's go in here and rename these. So I'm going to go into that ABC, and we go circle point 2, arrow down here, and I'm going to go circle point 3. Then what we're going to do is go to this point and then the end point. So we don't have to have the start point since this is our start point. So I'm going to go back to that center and then over to the edge, and I'm going to arrow down to the end. And now we go add point, linear, move back into here, go into the L, circular. So there's our position 5. Now we need to go to position 6. So I'm going to go in that 100 and then over to 100. And this one we actually don't have to put in because we already have it. We have position circle number 2. So all I have to do is go number, and I go 2, and there you go, circle point number 1. So I'm going to go back in here and I'm going to change this. I'm going to add this as circle point number 4. There we go. So now we have all our motions all the way to the end. So let's go back to home. So I'm going to add move point, and I'm going to jog, and I'm going to go to my home position. So I click inside here, 1, 2, 3. We're going to position 1, which is home position, and it brings us to the home position after we do the circle. So let's go to that home position. So I click here, and I'm going to hit enter on that, and then I'm going to hit step mode. Now we have a run request. So already locked out by another task. So if you ever get this, which happens very often when you're jumping between programs and running them, all you have to do is go to function, abort all, reset a couple times, and then we can go through the steps again. So we'll go shift forward. Now it brings me back to our start position. So I'm going to go up to number 1, and let's try this out. So I'm going to turn off step mode, shift, and I'm going to hit forward. Hit enter, and forward one more time. We're at that position, and notice how it's traveling along that path. and a circular motion. Let's slow this down just a little bit so we can see what we're doing. So I'm going to shift, and I'm going to speed down just a hair bit, and then I'm going to try it again. So I'm going to go shift forward, coming on down, and you can see now it's traveling along that path, that circular path, to the radius, all the way around to the end, and then back up to our start position. Now we have our circular path in play. So now we're going to come down and do the triangle path. So at the end here, do another frame setup. So I'm going to go new instruction, and I'm going to go miscellaneous and remark and frame setup number 2. Now we do not have to do the U-frame tool number again, but I like to, just because I want to make sure that if I ever change it in the future, I don't have to actually add another line. So it saves a little bit of time if you have to change it in the future. So I'm going to go new instruction, go offset frames, U-frame and U-tool are the ones we're going to do. We're going to use U-tool first, just kind of keep with the same process. So I'm going to go 1, and then we're going to go new instruction, offset frames, and we're going to use user frame, and we're going to use user frame number 2. So I'm going to go to constant 2, enter. There we go. So we're using user frame number 2, which is not set up right now. So we're going to actually set this up in a second here. So we are at the home position. So again, I like to have home position just to make sure before we run this. So we're going to go home position. I'm going to add a remark. So I'm going to go new instruction, miscellaneous, remark, and I'm going to go home position. And now we're going to make sure that we are in user tool frame number 1 and user frame number 2. So let's go up to menu, setup, frames. Here's user frame, so let's switch it to number 2. So set IND 2, enter. So now we're using user frame number 2. Let's go to other, make sure we're in tool frame number 1. So here we go. Active tool frame is number 1, but just in case, set IND 1, enter. So now we're definitely in user frame number 1. So we swapped our frames before we did any motion groups. So now let's actually set up that user frame. So let's go back to other, user frame, and number 2, let's go detail. Brings us in. So here's the comment. Let's double click it. Options keyboard, and let's call this triangle. And then we can go method. We're going to use 3-point since we don't know the positions of these 3 areas. We know the position of the center. We could probably do some math and figure out where the positions are if we wanted to, but we're going to set this up just like we would on the actual robot. So let's go 3-point method. And let's go down to the origin point. Let's get us close. So let's actually click the triangle, and it's 450 in X, 450 in Y. So let's go position, and I'm going to go X, Y, and Z. X is going to be 450, Y is going to be 450, and it's going to be that negative 312 in the Z position. Move 2. Let's look at which direction our actual UCS is going right now. So you can see our UCS does not match our position. So let's look at the triangle and see what rotation we have on it. Double click it, and we have a 45-degree rotation on this. So I'm going to rotate my tool as well so that the UCS of this matches the rotation of my triangle. So I'm going to go to my R and type in 45. There we go. So now my X matches the direction from top to the middle here, and my Y matches from X and Y. Makes things just a little bit easier. So I'm going to go down here, and I'm going to try to get it in line with this chart. Now if I put my 0, 0 right at the center of this little leg right here of this triangle, that means whatever the number is here, I can make the same exact mirror on this side. And it just makes things a little bit easier. So I'm going to bring this down to the origin, and plus this is going to be my X point, and this is going to be my Y point. So I'm going to just bring this down, and we'll rotate this around so I can actually see the points. Try to get that in line. Make sure I'm only seeing, there we go. And we'll bring this in line. Zoom on in. And that's probably as close as I'm going to get it. So I'm going to make that my 0, 0, 0. So that's going to be my origin. So I'm going to go to close that out, and I'm going to go Shift Record. Then I'm going to pick my X coordinate. So my X coordinate is going to go to this position right here. And it should be 100. So there we go. So my X coordinate is going to be recorded. So Shift Record. Then I'm going to move back to my origin. So I'm going to click my origin and I'm going to go Move To. There it goes, Move To. And then I'm going to go in my X component all the way up to 200. So it should be exactly at that center if I did everything right, or very close to that. Now again, if you're on an actual robot, you would have to actually jog it to that, eyeball it, and record it. So this is my Y position, so I click here, Record. Everything's now positioned. So now we have our new position based on our 0, 0, 0. So I can go to my second point here and Move To. There we go. And I can actually just bring this to my first position here, which is 200. And I can save that position. So I'm going to go back into my program, select, circle, triangle, enter. And I'm going to go at the end here, and I'm going to add a line for my home position, and then I'm going to continue on. So let's go EDCM, let's go Insert, and how many lines? We're going to go 1 line, enter. So it gives me additional lines. So let's go down to end, and then let's go New Instruction, Miscellaneous, Remark, and this is going to be my triangle program. Exit. So notice how we have an additional line here so we can go back to our home position and save it. But since we're in position here, might as well use that. So we're going to go down from our home position down to that first position with a joint movement. So we're going to go Joint Movement 100, fine. So I'm going to rename this as Triangle Point 1 down to end. And then we're going to move it to our next position. Let's go clockwise again. Should go all the way to 200. Go down to end. Add move point. And we're going to go linearly so we can go from side to side in a straight line. And we're going to go fine. And then we're going to go to our next position. So I'm going to go 100 to the center and then 200 up. So that's going to be my next position. So I'm going to add move point. Linear, and then my final linear movement is to position 1, which I do not have to move there because I have that position already saved. So linear position, I'm going to go back in here and make that number 6. So that's triangle point 1. So I'm going to go in here and we change the names here, and this is going to be triangle PT2, and then this is going to be triangle point 3. So then we can go back to our home position from this point, or that final point. So let's go up to position here, go joint, and let's change that to 0, 0, 0, 0, and -90. Move to. So that's our home position. And then let's record that. So we're going to go add move point. We're going to do a jog to that. And let's call this home position. Now you'll notice that it's a different line because we're using a different user frame. So we're going to use user frame number 2's home position. So let's rename this and we're going to call this home position, my home pos. And then let's go up to line 15 and add that same instruction. So we're going to go add move point, joint movement, and let's change this to number 9, which is our home position. So you can see we can add a line of code to an empty line. So we have our home position, our triangle program. We're going to our home. Now let's see what happens when we go to start of the program. So I go up to our top point, over to 1, and let's slow this down just a hair bit. So maybe 20 or 15-ish, and see what that's at. So we hold shift, and then we're going to go forward. So we're going to hit enter, and then forward again, comes down, does our circle. Comes up to the home position, switches tool frames and user frames, and then goes to our second position of our triangle, tip of the triangle, and then back down. Alright, so let's turn this on auto and see what happens. So we're going to reset a couple times. We're going to turn the teach pendant off. We're going to cycle start. Comes down, runs a smooth pattern. Comes down to our triangle, runs a smooth pattern. And there we go. We have two programs in one actual code area. Later on, we will actually separate this into two different parts, which is why I set it up the way I did, so that we have a square program, a separate circle program, and a separate triangle program, so that we're going to use those programs in another program. So we're going to use them something known as a subprogram. So in the next video, we will continue on programming these two ovular shaped items